Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Cobra Triangle, brought to us by Nintendo and developed by Rare. In Cobra Triangle, you get to control a boat, getting to do several different styles of levels over the course of 24 different stages. So here we go with Cobra Triangle for the NES. As we begin, the first one of our levels is Race to the Finish. Our goal here is to get to the finish line within the time limit. The controls are simple, being able to just move our boat and fire. You can see at the bottom of the screen there is an upgrade thing like Gradius, where every time you pick up one of the pods it goes to the next one, and you can then press select when you want to actually use whichever of the power-ups you have highlighted. Two power-ups are a must though, Turbo and Speed. You must at least get them before a certain level just because you need the speed in order to use the ramps and get over a couple of jumps. Here we're nearing the end of level number 1 and then moving on to stage 2, which has us gathering more pods. So what you have to do here is collect the pods. You have a time limit, and your goal is to get all of them within that. Getting used to the ramps takes a little bit of time. Don't go backwards unless you have enough time to get it. You can keep going forward and the track keeps looping. But if you want to try to get them all in one thing, you can. Just be careful of the barrier, because you have to keep going or else the barrier will catch up with you and end up taking you out. The missiles are another upgrade that you're going to want to do as soon as you can. We'll be saving right now for just a little while until we face off against the first boss. Next level is the first of the Dispose of Mines stages. For these, you have to run to the mines and grab them, and then get it to the detonation spot. You can see right here the square, you just gotta ride it in there and it'll blow up. Make sure you get away from it when it does. And you just have to do that for each one of these. A nice little trick is when the boats are chasing you, if they run into you, they'll steal the mine back. But if you go in a circle, you can go right around them and get a little bit of space between you and them, and thus be able to continue racing down to get the mine dropped off. Once you plant the final mine, you move on to the next stage. The next level is Reach to the Finish. Here you have this current pushing you, and you have to work your way through it and up, dodging a lot of different obstacles and dealing with them. Watch out for the whirlpools, they will end up sending you flying all around. Thankfully there's enough space to get in between the whirlpools as we get to the end here and just have a few more logs to dodge before we hit the finish line and move on to the next stage. The next stage is our first boss. We're going to go ahead and use our missile as soon as we can. You should already have probably used it by now, but either way, you don't need it until now. And you want to just use it and then fire at the boss. You want to make sure that you just keep mashing that button, dodging every so often to watch out for the projectiles that the boss shoots out. This is still a challenging fight regardless, because those things can be very devastating, as well as just the body of the monster will end up hitting you. Just kind of keep focusing your firepower until the boss is taken care of and you're moving on to the next level. If you would like, you can use the turbo button in those fights. I'll even use it a little bit myself later on in the game, just because some fights are extremely challenging trying to just defeat them by just mashing the attack button. For this level, it's just a bonus. Just keep going around, you'll automatically be moving and just turn and fire at the various targets around, and you'll get some bonus points for the like. In the next level, you have to guard the people here. You can see the counter at the bottom, how many people you have left, 8. And you have to just keep moving around and destroying the boats. Now, unfortunately, it's really hard to save every single one of them. As long as you have someone still left, you win the level. You just have to survive the time limit and make sure there's at least somebody left to guard. Kind of just keep moving. You could go in a circle a little bit as well to try to get some of your shots off. The UFOs can fire out these very annoying missiles that end up freezing you in place as well as doing damage to you. Whenever you get hit by them, just try to get out of it and immediately go into an attack so you can try to take out whichever boats have grabbed civilians. Once the time limit hits 0, as long as you have some people left, you're good, and you're moving on to the next stage. Next up is Jump the Waterfall. Here we're going to be hitting these ramps in order to boost ourselves over. Gotta watch out for the whirlpools as you do it. The current will pull you the one direction and then throw you the other direction, so you have to be ready to be able to hit those ramps. It can be a little bit difficult for sure. Stage number 9 is another one of those race to the finish levels. Just got to get to the end within the time limit. In some of these levels you have splits that you can do, going left or right. It does change up the order of the levels a little bit, but you still end up completing the same set of levels, just in a slightly different order. Thankfully, with the extra firepower from the missiles, we can hit a lot of these boats pretty easily, as well as some of the stuff on the sides of the racetrack that are trying to hit us as well. The track is thankfully pretty straightforward. You just have to keep on moving through, firing at the enemies that try to get into our path. Here's where we make the choice to go left or right. I'm just going to go ahead and go left. And finish up the track to move on to the next stage. After that, you have another one of the bonus levels where you're moving down the river here and shooting at the various targets on the side. After finishing up the targets, we're moving on to the next stage, stage number 12. At stage 12 is another one of the Dispose of the Mines levels. This one's going to be a little bit tougher for sure than the previous one. You have 2 boats coming at you to try to steal the mines back, but the trick that you did before, going around in a circle, is still as effective with 2 boats as it is against a singular boat. Anytime you end up having them just get close, just do that little circle real fast, and you should have no problem being able to get that extra space that you need to finish off dropping the mine. You gotta make sure that you do it early enough though, so that you actually have enough space to go around in the circle, or else you may accidentally still run into them. Grab the last mine here, head over to the other side, drop it off, and move on to stage number 13. While it's not a game I hear talked about that much, Cobra Triangle is actually a pretty fun game. Not only did it have some great graphics for the era, it also has that variety of gameplay that you just didn't see at the time. I also like the overall isometric look to the game. I think they did a great job with it. And it has some decent music as well. This level is extremely difficult to try to get through. You gotta take your time, waiting for these things to go back down into the water before you attempt to go over. If the icicles end up running into you, it's just gonna end up damaging you, and it won't take too many in order to drain your health. You do have a decent amount of time in the time limit to get through here, so it's not too bad to take your time. If you have the force ability, use that because that gives you invulnerability. I'm going to be using that later on in the second version of this level, basically. Wait for those right opportunities to keep moving through the ice, and finish up the level. Next up is another race to the finish. This is another one of those levels where we are going to work our way through the track within the time limit. The thing is though, this time you do need a certain amount of speed, so make sure you have the turbo and speed things upgraded so that you have enough speed to get over the big ramp jump a little bit later into the level. Thankfully, there's a decent amount of enemies that can drop off pods for you if you need them. As long as you have the upgrades, you should be good. We can go a decent speed now and get ourselves over the ramp. Now this ramp right here is the one that you have to make sure that you have enough speed for, the second one. The first one is optional, the second one you have to take. Slow down a little bit when you go around certain corners, just kind of let go of the accelerator a bit. You can easily bump into these walls quite a lot and lose a lot of health because of it. Here we have a couple more ramps we're gonna hit. And then finishing up the level. The next stage is collecting more pods. It's just like before, just a little bit more difficult to grab them. We're gonna be pretty much doing the same strategy as we did before. If you miss any, just keep on going and then come back around since the level ends up scrolling around. Once you've gathered up all the pods, just keep going through the level, watching out for the bombs and other enemies. Just keep moving so you don't get hit by the barrier behind you. And once the time limit runs out, we're moving on to the next stage. The next stage is another one of the guarding people levels. We're going to stay here relatively in the center and keep moving around and firing. It can be difficult for sure to get them all, and very easily to lose at least some of the civilians. The UFOs are just as annoying as last time, with them firing missiles at you that can freeze you for a few moments. Unfortunately, those missiles end up homing in on you and they chase you down a lot of times. If one of your civilians gets knocked out of the area, you can go grab them and bring them back to the center area. If you leave them outside of it, they more than likely will end up getting attacked by one of the boats. Unfortunately, I do end up losing a life here. Thankfully, you start right back where you were, so you don't really lose anything. And it can be really difficult not to end up losing a life during the course of this level. There's just a lot of missiles and a lot of stuff going on. Next up is the next boss encounter. We're going to immediately start mashing the attack button right near it, and then when it knocks us away, continue that process of trying to point towards it and firing, watching out for the tentacles and the projectiles it fires out. Thankfully, you can move around a little bit with this boss. It's not as bad as some of the other ones that we're going to be dealing with soon. The next stage is the bonus level here of shooting the targets. Just the same as it's been pretty much every time, just slowly making our way down and firing at the various targets on the side. Next up, level number 19 is another race to the finish. We are slowly starting to near the end of the game. Like I said, there's 24 stages that we're going to be doing. The 25th stage is a celebratory ending. I recommend during this level, build up your upgrade thing until it hits the force thing, and then keep it there until we make it to one of the later stages. Some tight turns, just gotta be careful not to run into too many of the walls here. Hit another big ramp and another couple of jumps. Just a little bit farther before we end up hitting that finish line. The next stage is dispose of the mines again. We're going to do what we've been doing before. Grab a hold of the mines and then run them quickly over to the disposal spot. This time though, there is a whirlpool guarding the spot, which can be more difficult getting to for sure. You can still use your strategy of going around in a circle in order to keep the boats that are trying to grab the mine away from you at bay, but the whirlpool is the biggest threat to you mainly during this level. Here I just wait for the whirlpool to kind of get into the right way, and then go for it. It hits me still, but I was able to plant the mine. I thought I was going to be there on time, but I was a little early on that time. Here they steal the mine from me, but I'm able to get it back pretty quickly and dispose of it in order to finish up the stage and move on to the next level. Now this is the toughest stage for me in the entire game, reaching the finish here. Just really difficult to get through. I highly recommend having the force ability ready. Work your way through the first few areas, watching out for all the rocks and stuff coming out of the water. Just take your time if need be. When you make it here, use the force ability and run through the gauntlet of rocks that are going to be coming your way here. Hopefully you can keep it long enough to get through the main part of this area, and then finish up the level. Next up is Jump the Waterfall, the last of the regular levels. We have 2 bosses after this. Just gotta be very careful once again getting through past the whirlpools and hitting the ramps correctly. There's 2 whirlpools at the last one, just gotta wait for that right opportunity to go through and finish up the level. And now we go on to the final 2 boss fights. The first fight is almost impossible without using turbo, because this boss, one hit kills you. Your whole health meter gone in 1 second. So I highly recommend using the turbo. Get to a spot if possible. You're probably going to get hit at least once. And just once you get that target sighted, just hold down that turbo button and take down the boss in a few seconds, or mash that button as quick as you possibly can to hopefully survive. For the second boss, the final boss of the game, you have the shark that goes around and then pops out of the water. You need to be in the right spot so that when the shark pops out of the water, you're able to deal damage to it. It can be a lengthy fight because hitting the shark itself can be difficult because you have to hit the front mouth area. Hitting other parts of the shark will just end up causing it to just not take any damage, and you have a relatively strict time limit if you end up going too slow during this fight. The fin, as well as the shark, will bite you if you end up getting too close, so you have to make sure you stay your distance, but then be ready to move in right when the shark's coming up, so you can hopefully go into a nice firing combo. It may take a little bit of time, but once the shark is taken care of, we can sit back and enjoy the ending, the Cobra Triangle, on the NES. So there you have it, Cobra Triangle for the Nintendo Entertainment System from Rare. A fun game that I think holds up relatively well. It has a nice variety of gameplay options, as well as, even with some frustration, it can be overcome for sure. As the credits finish up with the end, we then go to enter our initials screen. And once we have done that, it'll wrap up this episode of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.